Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about why building trust with your teen isn't working. I mean, how is that possible if you know what trust is and they know what trust is, and why can't they just be more trustworthy? I mean, you're doing what you were taught and yet they keep breaking your trust and they don't even seem interested in earning your trust back. In fact, they don't seem to care. Wow. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a bit. If you are struggling with building trust with your teen or having a lot of lying even, this is the video for you. I'm going to talk to you about what trust is, what it's not, why the old school thinking around building trust is actually the thing in your way of getting more of what you want with your teen, and how you can shift your mindset to rebuild trust to have in your relationship with your teen that you probably didn't even have with your parents. Okay, my name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach. I have been doing this work for 15 years now, and I work primarily with parents of teens to help them end the painful disconnection, emotional blow-ups, and stressful silences to build healthy, lasting relationships based on trust and respect. I was a very troubled teen. There was zero trust in my childhood between me and my parents and me, zero trust. And I'm sharing in what I talk about everything I learned in my own 20 years of therapy and healing, raising two of the most incredible sons whom I have a depth of trust with. And I'm so grateful for that. And everything I've learned in my coach training and etc. Okay, so if trust is a thing, like a thorn between you and your teen, this is for you. All right, so let's jump in. So I'm just reading my notes here because squirrel brain, I want to make sure that I stay on track and provide value for this. Okay, trust is earned is a very common statement. Trust is earned. How many of you grew up, if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching here on Instagram, hit the follow, hit the subscribe. Tell me in the comments, did you grow up with the statement, trust is earned? Put a yes or no in the comments if you grew up with the statement, trust is earned. Most of us did. If you're like me, if you're a Gen Xer, Gen Y, and you were raised by traditionalist baby boomers, you would have grown up with under the saying that trust is earned. Right. Okay. So now here's the part two of this. Did you also grow up with the saying, well, trust is a two-way street? Trust is a two-way street, you know. Trust is a two-way street. And it was intended to imply that somehow your parent was trusting you, but you were falling short of being trustworthy. Did that sound familiar? So here's the problem. Here's the problem with these two statements. Trust is earned and trust is a two-way street are actually contradictory statements. They are contradictory statements. Here is why. I'm going to share with you why, okay? Because trust is earned says that you, your child, your teen, is required to do the work to reach some unknown vague standard of yours to be deemed as trustworthy. Does that sound familiar of how you were raised? That's not a two-way street. Like, not at all. Because all I hear is that your teen, your child, is required to do the work to meet your standards. So how is that a two-way street exactly? Trust is earned trust is a one-way. That's a one-way thinking. That's not a two-way street. I know you want to think it is, because us in our insecure egos, as we were raised with, want to believe that we are the standard and the measure of trustworthiness. And it is our job as a parent to make sure that our child reaches said standard, even though we really have no way of necessarily describing said vague standard, but we just know they need to pedal a lot harder to reach it. That's not a two-way street. And that is why trust is earned leads to, which I will explain further as I go, codependence, higher levels of anxiety, and eventually demotivation, and even more lying. And you're like, what? Allie, what now? How is it possible that trust is earned if I'm raising my child to understand that trust is earned, that I'm going to actually be getting more lying? It's true. Okay, stick with me. So first of all, let's define what trust is. Okay, let's just start with what is trust. I use a lot of the Dr. Brené Brown research because I am not a researcher. So she's thankfully already done this. So what she's found in her research is that trust is a huge concept for our brains, that we generally suck at actually understanding what it even means. Like what is even trust? So we throw out terms like I don't trust you or trust is earned or all this other bullshit, but we don't actually know what trust is. So here's how she has defined it, and I'm going to use this definition for the purpose of this talk. She uses an acronym called BRAVING. So BRAVING. And here's what the acronym stands for. If you want a copy of it, you can message me at Allie Payne on Instagram or put a comment in the YouTube here and I'll post the actual graphic. B is boundaries. So I trust you when you have boundaries, because if you don't have boundaries, it's hard to trust you. Because you'll say whatever I want you to say, or you'll suppress and abandon yourself to try and please me, and then eventually I'll end up being the bad guy. And so I can't trust you if I don't know what you stand for. Okay? So boundaries. R is reliability. Do you say what you're going to do? Like, are you reliable? A is accountability. Are you willing to do what is courageous and hard instead of what's comfortable and easy? Vault. V is vault. It does what I tell you, stay in the vault. It doesn't come out like at your bridge group or your wine gang with your girlfriends because it makes you more popular because you've got something to talk about because your teen got their period that day. Or your son has his first girlfriend. That's not your news to tell. And it doesn't make you more important or more special or cooler as a parent. That kind of thing. Does things stay in the vault? I is integrity. Okay, so again, do you live by the values that you espouse? Do you walk your talk, or do you just talk about it, but act differently? N is non-judgment. Are you willing to hear what I have to say with empathy first? Empathy, curiosity, and compassion first, as opposed to criticism and condemnation. So N is non-judgment. G is generous assumption. Are you willing to, when things go horribly hot mess off the rails, assume that I was at least trying my best? Or I made an honest mistake, or I got scared? Are you willing to assume the better about me in the face of a giant hot mess, as opposed to assume the worst? Okay, so that is Dr. Brené Brown's definition of trust based on her research that I'm going to use here. So it's braving. Okay, is everybody still with me? All right, let's jump in. So let's talk about trust is earned. Here is the problem with trust is earned. And by the way, that has been studied to be false. Trust is earned has been studied. Dr. Stephen Covey is The Speed of Trust, and all of his work on trust, as well as Dr. Brené Brown's work. Trust is earned is a false statement. Scientifically proven, it's not true. Trust is given. Now, let me talk to you about the difference here. Trust is earned happens like this. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. Trust is earned, young lady. or trust is earned, young man. Okay, here's the problem with trust is earned. You, or your parent, if this is what you learned, get to stay nice and cozy and safe up on your righteous throne, and you never have to look at yourself. So you stay safe. But you are requiring or expecting your teenager to do all the work to build trust in your relationship while you take no responsibility for it. That is the truth behind the statement, trust is earned. It keeps you safe. You don't have to do the work. Your teenager or your child is required to do all the work. And better yet, it is often a very vague, black box, unknown standard where they need to just keep pedaling harder and harder and faster to earn your approval, to be deemed as worthy, lovable, and trustworthy as a human being. That is toxic, my friends. That is codependence. When you are having to pedal hard to meet someone else's standards that are not your own, not inherently your own, that is toxic. Now, as a parent, yes, of course, it is important to let our children know the difference between trust and lying, etc. Are you there to help them develop a standard? Yes. Is your standard moral high ground that they need to adopt in order to be deemed as good enough? No. I'm sorry. No. Your moral high ground, you are welcome to it. But requiring anyone else to climb that mountain to be good enough to sit at the top with you, not workable. So that is why trust is earned doesn't work, because it keeps you safe and you are not required to do any of the work. Here's the other thing that happens in that. There's an assumption, again, in trust is earned, which is not trust is a two-way street. That's a one-way street. That is an entirely one-way street that is built for them to fail. That trust is earned trust is a one-way street, and it is built and set up for your teen to fail, because you are the only one who gets the constant moving standard of that is basically unachievable, because you're asking for perfection. And until you are perfect, why are you asking your teenager to be perfect? Because they are not. Their brains are in a place where they are supposed to be making mistakes. Their brains are in a position where they are supposed to be learning and exercising independent decision-making, critical analysis, a lot of executive function that they need to get wrong in order to learn their own morality, beliefs, and values. So being condemned and judged in that process actually circumvents them from developing that, because children will inherently default to pleasing their parent, which has them create more anxiety because they're constantly looking for approval of others. And when they become a grown adult, as you and I are now, they have not learned to listen to and strengthen that inner compass of their own morality, values, and beliefs. Okay, I want to move on. So trust is earned is very a guilty until proven innocent statement. Comes from fear, condemnation, judgment, criticism. Okay, so when trust is broken, and it will be. I promise you, it will be. Trust will be broken. 96% of teenagers lie to their parents. And I'm pretty sure the other 4% in that study lied about lying. 96% of teens lie at some point. Did my teenagers lie? Not that I know of, but did they? Maybe. I don't know. All I know is they didn't get arrested and I didn't get called by the cops and like, I don't know. Did they lie? Well, yeah, actually they got caught in a couple lies, but they were pretty simple lies. They were exercising independence, independent choice making. Did it work for them? No. Did they like lose their life? Did they lose a life in the video game of being my child? No. I lied all the time. So when trust is broken, here's what happens from this trust is earned perspective. First of all, because of how much you love your teenager, because of the depth at which you have sacrificed, loved, and given your child to raise them in the best way that you know how, to likely give them a life that in your standard is better than what you got, because that's what we do. That's what we do, is every generation attempts to lift their children higher than they were. And that's a good thing. That's all for good reason. But what happens with that is we begin to hold an image of our children that they can't live up to. They literally cannot live up to it. And so I'm just looking at my notes here. When trust is broken, it can be, I'm not saying it's because your teenager didn't lie, like maybe they lied, and I'm not saying lying is like right, but I'm not going to label it right or wrong right now, okay? When, as a parent, you hold your teenager to an unsustainable standard that they literally cannot live up to, and it's unspoken, but they can feel it. They're the golden child. They are afraid to have really hard, risky conversations with you, so they lie. When they fall from grace, for your teenager, it's like balancing on the head of a pin, and that fall from grace is a very big one. It is a very big one because you were holding them to an unsustainable standard of perfection, that they just were going to be the teen that didn't lie. Oh, not my kids. Oh, not my children. No, they don't lie. How do you know? And even if you don't know, it makes them normal, just in case you're wondering. So it's a fault when you have that unsustainable image of your teen that they would never lie. It is a huge fall from grace. And then what happens with the trust is earned thing is, let's say, okay, trust is broken, and now you're living in, oh, trust is earned. Trust was given until it was broken. And now you need to earn it back. Here's what happens. Because you are sitting on your moral high ground, keeping yourself whole and safe, never having to look inside, never having to do your own work to heal the pain of being lied to, or deal with your own pain of feeling heartbroken from that fall from grace. What happens is the next earning your trust back, the bar moves higher. And now your teenager has to achieve this bar to make up for lying. And then if trust is broken again, now they have to meet this bar. And the bar just keeps moving higher and higher and higher until your teenager feels demotivated, wildly imperfect, that they are a failure. They have now internalized they are a failure, that they are never going to be worthy of love and respect. And they're just so demotivated to even try and be deemed as trustworthy that they give up and usually start completely lying and going the other direction. So, when trust is broken, here's what needs to happen, okay? So first of all, can we move away from trust is earned? It's bullshit. It's scientifically proven it's not true. It comes from a position of insecurity, fear, control, compliance, monitoring, not healthy relational mindset. Trust is given, is scientifically proven. trust is given. And here is why. Because if I am choosing to be in relationship with you, then where there is trust, or if trust is broken, we're going to rebuild trust. Part of rebuilding the trust means I am willing to stay in the relationship vulnerably, courageously, and be in my pain, not project that on my teen. I do not recommend that you project on your teen how they fell from grace from you. That is your work. You do that outside from your teen. Do not project that on your teen. But you stay in the relationship of the pain, and you stay in vulnerably and courageously, doing your work to heal, to see them as an imperfect person, because so are you, so that they can be in the pain of having broken your trust, and you are in it together. Rebuilding trust is a relational game that takes the work of everyone in that relationship. It is not the responsibility of your teen to earn your trust back while you sit back and be safe with an immovable, higher rising standard, and you never have to look at yourself. That is a self-righteous game that nobody's going to want to play with you. So rebuilding trust, you get back in and you try again, and you start to tell them, this is what trust looks like to me. Is that workable for you? Because trust is a relational currency, not one of high-handed authority. Trust is a relational currency. So you get in there and you say, this is what trust means to me. I want to trust you. What does trust mean to you? So even though I've given you this Dr. Brené Brown's definition of trust, you can use that as a framework with your teenager or not. But have you ever asked your teenager what trust looks like for them? Do you know how many teenagers tell me they don't feel like they can trust their parent? Now let's talk about trust as a two-way street, shall we? Let's talk about trust being a two-way street when you think you are a trustworthy person, but if I go ask your teenager and they're like, no, I can't trust my parent. I don't trust them. Like 90%, but I don't trust them 100%. Because of this thing they said, or because of this time I said this and they freaked out, or because of they've made judgmental statements about this, because of all the things that we do, because we're human. That's why. So I need you to play the imperfect game with your teenager and get in the mess with them and be part of rebuilding trust from a broken place with vulnerability and courage to say, I am choosing to trust you. Even though I have data that says I shouldn't, I know that you are human and I'm going to choose that. Now, here's the kicker to this one piece, okay? If you were raised in an environment where trust was earned, if you were raised in an environment where you needed to stand and balance on that head of a pin to be deemed as morally worthy, let alone trustworthy, and if you fell from the head of that pin, the punishment was a lifetime of constantly having to reach a higher and higher impossible standard to once again be deemed as trustworthy, you were probably raised in an environment where there wasn't forgiveness. Does that sound familiar? You were probably raised in an environment where forgiveness was not a thing. You were raised in an environment of scorekeeping and grudges. If you were raised in scorekeeping and grudges, this would probably sound really foreign to you, what I'm saying. I was raised that way. I was raised where the scorecard of my teenagerhood, I'm 50. The scorecard of my teenagerhood is still brought to the table as a point of conversation to remind me of who I really am. Please don't do that with your teenagers. Don't do that with anyone in your life. the quality of your relationships will have a lot to do with the level of grace and forgiveness that you have available. And I am not saying don't have boundaries. I'm not saying don't have boundaries. I'm not saying let people walk all over you. Absolutely not. I am saying be careful of your mindset with your teenager. If you came from an environment where trust had to be earned and there was no such thing as forgiveness because you grew up where there was grudges and a scorecard, this is going to be hard. Not impossible, but hard. Okay? And that is why when trust is given and then trust is broken, you stay in that relationship, in your brokenness, with vulnerability, courage, and compassion to help rebuild it. Because one person does not rebuild the trust in a relationship. Okay? So, now, if someone breaks your trust consistently over and over, yeah, you might have a boundary that says, I love you and I respect you. This is what trust looks like to me. And I probably won't engage in my relationship with you heavily because this continues to cross a boundary for me. Even though I'm still willing to be vulnerable and courageous with you, I probably won't go deep with you because I consistently feel hurt. So, but that's harder for a teenager to understand. Okay, here's my last point that I want to bring up. I want to talk about this. Okay, there was a mother who talked to me about her daughter, and her daughter had consistently over and over for like the last month, or sorry, even more than that, her daughter had been lying. Her daughter had been lying about almost everything. Constant lies. And this mama was so exhausted from trying to create monitoring and compliance with the lying and then consequences. It was an exhausting battle. And nothing was changing. Nothing was changing, excuse me. So here's what she did. She decided to believe her daughter was telling the truth. She decided to believe her daughter was telling the truth. So for 30 days, she said, I knew she was still lying, but I decided to believe her at face value and behave in my relationship with her as if she was telling the truth. And guess what happened? 30 days into this, her daughter shifted because she was being treated as someone who told the truth. She was being given the grace and extended the compassion to be treated as someone who told the truth. And her own morality kicked in after 30 days. Here's another, this is a scientific example for you. In 1960, Douglas McGregor did a study on management. This also is for parenting, called Theory X and Theory Y management styles. Theory X first of all, they believed that their staff were lazy, inherently lazy and irresponsible. They needed constant motivating to stay on track toward a goal. They were irresponsible. They needed carrot and stick motivation, nagging, reminding, all of that stuff, okay? Theory Y managers believed that their people would get stuff done and they would do it via their own internal motivation in a way that was meaningful and important to them, but would still bring value to the organization. There was still regular check-ins and reviews to make sure that everyone was like following the same goals. But Theory Y managers were empowering their people to bring their own skill set and what was important to them to get things done. They had more flexibility, and there was positive reinforcement and a lot of opportunity for upward movement, more responsibility, promotion, etc., like that. Do you want to know the only difference in the thinking? I hope you're getting this part. The only difference in the thinking in that study, 1960, between a Theory X manager and a Theory Y manager? Trust. The only difference was trust. The Theory X manager had all the same staff, same demographic, same socioeconomic, like all the same staff as a Theory Y manager. The Theory Y manager didn't get the cream of the crop. The Theory Y manager didn't get the best of the best. The Theory X manager did not get the bottom of the barrel, the people who like barely made it, like the warm bodies. They had the same staff. And the only difference between the Theory X results, which was high attrition, which means people quit more often, in Theory X management, people inherently were shirking responsibility, constantly nagged and reminded and believed they were lazy and irresponsible. And yet what they did, because this is the way our brains operate, is they were defensive, they shirked responsibility, they procrastinated more, and they were way less productive because of the way they were treated. Theory Y staff were highly efficient, they were productive, they had better communication, they also got more rewards, they met goals faster. The only difference in the thinking was trust. So when Theory X managers were taught the fundamentals of trust and how trust can show up, Theory X managers who shifted, not all the way over to Theory Y, but at least like a middle ground, guess what happened? Their staff changed too. Go figure. Their staff changed too. So here's what I want to wrap with. Trust is not a vague, unknown standard, moral high ground for you to lord over your teen and make sure that they attain it, but they don't really even know what it is and you can't explain it. Trust is, in fact, a two-way street. And that means trust is given. And when trust is broken, you are an equal part of repairing the trust in the relationship, not expecting your teen to do all the work while you sit on your moral high ground chair, all nice and safe, never having to do any work or look in here at how you are contributing in ways you might not know to a lack of trust in the relationship. Trust is given, and trust is a two-way street. Even though you may have grown up where trust was earned and it was an unknown standard, you had to constantly balance on some version of perfection and you fell from grace and you never got back up there, that does not mean you need to repeat that for your teenager. If you want more information on this, the Empowered Parent Mastermind, my self-paced option, is now available. It's available 24/7, all the time. You can jump in, all 8 modules, trust, lying, and forgiveness is one of them. And you get access to lifetime content, private community, support from me, and you can upgrade at any point to the live program for only the difference, never a penny more. The Empowered Parent Mastermind self-paced program, if you hit the link in my bio, it's in there, or if you go to my website under programs, it's there. It's available anytime. If you want the link, let me know. It's on early bird pricing right now until Monday afternoon. Okay, if you're on Instagram, hit the follow. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for joining me today. Next week, I will likely be here on Wednesday, not Thursday. I'm going to be on a plane on Thursday. So next week, I'm going to be talking more about forgiveness. So this will be like a part 1, part 2. I'm going to talk more about forgiveness next week. So I will post when that is. It will likely be on Wednesday at around noon. So Pacific time. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for joining me. Please share this with any parents that you feel are struggling and know that you are not alone. You don't have to do this alone. Thanks, everybody. Bye.